Her stepsister paid boys to break her heart. But one day, a prince walked into the market and changed everything. Betrayed, humiliated, and laughed at by the whole village, Akume had no idea that the man buying tomatoes beside her was a royal in disguise. What happens next will leave your heart shaking. Don't blink. In the colourful village of Kalui, there lived two girls under one roof, Akume and Nelisa. Though they were raised like sisters, their hearts were miles apart. Akume, the older one, was soft-spoken, gentle, and known for her quiet strength. She never complained, even when life was unfair. She was the daughter of Chief Baruti's first wife, who had passed away when Akume was just a child. Since then, her stepmother had taken control, and so had Nelisa, her sharp, loud, and flashy daughter, who never missed a chance to show off or speak ill of others, especially Akume. While Akume swept the floors and stirred the family's evening soup, Nelisa wore golden bangles and silk wrappers, bought by her mother using Chief Baruti's wealth. She rarely lifted a finger and treated Akume like a maid, calling her slow, poor, and unwanted. She enjoyed every moment of Akume's struggle, knowing her words stung deeper than a knife. The sad part, Akume never fought back. She simply lowered her head and kept working. But what truly burned inside Nelisa wasn't just her need for control, it was jealousy. No matter how many earrings she wore or how loud her laugh was, the boys in Kalui never looked her way for long. Their eyes always found Akume. There was something about her, her calmness, her grace, her soft smile. Even when she wore the plainest wrapper, she carried herself like a queen. Every time a boy passed their compound and greeted only Akume, Nelisa's blood boiled. It didn't help that the villagers spoke kindly about Akume, whispering how she had her mother's beauty and her father's heart. Some even said she would make a great wife one day, humble, loyal, and kind. Nelisa heard it all, and every word pushed her deeper into hatred. How could a girl who washed pots and fetched water be loved more than her, the daughter who wore perfume and polished sandals? In public, Nelisa smiled and acted sweet, but behind closed doors, she insulted Akume, called her cursed, and reminded her she had no real mother. Still, Akume said nothing. She simply folded her clothes, cleaned the kitchen, and prayed in silence. Her spirit remained untouched, and that only made Nelisa angrier. She wanted Akume broken, not just in body, but in heart. She wanted her ashamed, rejected, and alone. That became her mission. And so, while Akume remained kind and unaware, Nelisa began planning in secret. She had watched how the village boys admired Akume. If she couldn't stop them from liking her, maybe she could use that against her. Maybe the same boys who smiled at Akume could be turned into weapons, ones that would leave her crying, humiliated, and unloved. To Nelisa, it was no longer about who was prettier. It was about winning, and she was ready to play dirty. What Akume didn't know was that the person who shared her roof was not just jealous, but dangerous. Nelisa's jealousy grew worse with each passing day. She couldn't take it anymore. Every time someone complimented Akume or smiled at her, it felt like a slap across her face. In her heart, she knew Akume had never tried to steal attention, but that made it worse. How could someone so quiet, who didn't even try, be loved more than her? One night, as moonlight poured through her window, Nelisa sat with her closest friends under the mango tree behind their compound. Her eyes burned with rage, and her voice was sharp as a blade when she spoke. "I'll make sure Akume never finds love," she hissed. "Not even a goat will marry her." Her friends giggled nervously, unsure if she was joking, but Nelisa wasn't. She meant every word. The next morning, she started putting her plan together. She chose 3 village boys, each for a reason. First was Mbezi, the sweet talker. He had a smooth tongue and could charm any girl with just a few words. Second was Loco, the strong one. His muscles were admired by many, and his presence made girls blush. Last was Jaji, the son of a hunter, quiet but clever, and known for his sharp tricks and games. She knew they each had what it took to attract Akume's attention. Nelisa called them aside one by one and offered what they liked most. Mbezi got coins, Loco was promised a brand new wrapper and bowls of yam porridge, and Jaji received 2 chickens and a special hunting knife. But there was one condition: get close to Akume, make her fall in love, then break her heart in front of everyone. Shame her, crush her, make her feel worthless. At first, they hesitated. Akume wasn't just another girl. She was kind to everyone, even them. But Nelisa reminded them of their debts, their desires, and tempted them with more. Slowly, they agreed. The trap was set. Each boy started his move. Mbezi approached first, handing Akume flowers and praising her cooking. Akume, shy and unsure, didn't know how to respond. She had never been noticed like this before. Then, Loco stepped in, helping her carry firewood from the market, complimenting her strength, walking beside her like a protector. Akume felt seen for the first time. Last came Jaji, who sat beside her by the stream and told her gentle stories, his voice soft as water. Akume's heart, once guarded, started to open. She didn't know it was all a lie. Behind the smiles and sweet words was a cruel plan, stitched together by her own stepsister. Every kind gesture had a deadline. Every compliment was poisoned. Nelisa watched from the shadows, grinning as Akume smiled at the boys. She believed she was finally winning. Soon, Akume would be heartbroken, humiliated, and left with nothing but shame. And when that happened, Nelisa would dance. She didn't just want Akume to lose love. She wanted her to believe no one could ever truly love her. It was the perfect trap, or so Nelisa thought. Akume had never been in love before, so when Mbezi started showing interest, her heart opened like a flower after rain. He met her by the mango trees, whispered sweet words, and listened as she spoke about her dreams. Small, simple things, like owning her own stall, or wearing her late mother's wrapper on her wedding day. Mbezi smiled and nodded, acting like he truly cared. Akume had no idea it was all an act. One afternoon, in the middle of the village square, where everyone gathered to buy goods and share stories, Mbezi stood on a bench and shouted, "Who would love a girl like her? I was just bored." People turned, laughed. Akume froze, her heart breaking into pieces in front of the crowd. Her ears burned. She didn't cry, not in front of them. She just ran, fast, far, to the back of the house where no one could see. But just as the pain from Mbezi began to fade, Loco appeared. He had broad shoulders and a bold voice. He gave her beads he claimed were from the city and called her queen every time they met. Akume felt seen again. Maybe Mbezi had been a mistake, she thought. Maybe Loco was real. But that hope shattered at the wrestling games. As boys showed off their strength, people laughed and cheered. Then, in front of everyone, Loco pointed at Akume and laughed loudly, saying, "She begged me to marry her, desperate like her poor mother." The crowd roared with laughter again. Akume stood still, numb. Her heart had taken another blow. Her legs moved, but her spirit was crushed. After that, she kept to herself. She stopped waiting by the mango tree. She avoided the market when it was full. But just when she thought the worst was over, Jaji approached. He was softer, quieter, and brought her a carved wooden heart, saying it was a symbol of his promise. Akume hesitated, but he was gentle, patient. Slowly, she smiled again, just a little, just enough to hope. But after one moon, while walking to the market, Akume saw Jaji laughing with Nelisa, pointing at her as they shared a joke. Then he turned to Akume and said, "You believed I carved that for you, foolish girl." People heard. They laughed again. It felt like knives on her skin. This time, Akume didn't run. She just walked away, slow, quiet, her eyes dry but empty. She stopped smiling. She stopped speaking unless spoken to. The village noticed. The girl who once brought warmth with her silence now carried only shadows. The damage was deep. 3 heartbreaks, 3 humiliations, all public, all planned. She didn't know why this kept happening. She didn't know the hands behind her pain wore golden bangles and a cruel smile. All she knew was that love, whatever it was not for someone like her. The sun hung low over Kalui, casting a golden haze across the village market. It was just another dusty afternoon. Traders calling out prices, children chasing chickens, and women laughing as they bargained. But something different happened that day. A stranger arrived. He wasn't loud or proud. His clothes were plain, his sandals worn. He looked like any other traveler. His name was Tunobi. He moved through the market like he belonged, picking tomatoes, tasting roasted groundnuts, and greeting the elders with quiet respect. There was something calm about him, something steady. People noticed, but no one asked too many questions. He didn't act like someone special. That's when he saw her. Akume sat alone under a baobab tree near the edge of the market. Her head was down, her hands picking at the hem of her wrapper. Her eyes told a story of pain too deep for words. Tunobi watched her for a moment, then walked over, slowly, like he didn't want to scare her. He sat beside her without asking, placing a ripe mango between them. "You look like someone who hasn't smiled in a while," he said gently. Akume looked at him, surprised. No teasing, no tricks, just calm, soft eyes. They sat quietly. He didn't ask questions. He offered a piece of the mango and told a simple story about a traveler who got lost and found peace in the most unexpected place. She didn't laugh, but she listened. That was the beginning. Every evening after that, they met under the same tree. He brought fruits, sometimes roasted maize, and always a new story. Akume listened. Tunobi never asked her about her past, never pressed her to talk. He just let her be. Slowly, she began to open up. She told him about her mother, her dreams, her pain, one piece at a time. What she didn't know was that Tunobi wasn't just a traveler. He was the crowned prince of the Elaro kingdom. He had left the palace, hiding his identity, to search for something more than beauty or status. He wanted a queen with a pure heart, someone real. The royal court expected him to marry a princess from a wealthy lineage, but Tunobi refused. He wanted to see the world, to meet people who didn't bow before him. And in the dusty heart of Kalui, under an old baobab tree, he found something rare. Akume's silence wasn't weakness. It was strength. Her pain hadn't made her bitter. She still showed kindness, even when the world hadn't returned it. She listened, not out of duty, but care. Tunobi felt something he hadn't felt in years, peace. And every day, as the sun dipped behind the trees, he grew more certain. This girl, the one with tired eyes and a quiet soul, might be the queen he'd been searching for. But for now, he kept his secret. He wanted her to love the man, not the title. And so, the prince and the broken girl talked beneath the tree, unaware that destiny was already writing a new chapter for them both. Kalui buzzed with excitement. The Festival of Crowns was near, a grand event where kings, queens, princes, and nobles from across the lands would gather in the village. Music would echo through the hills, colors would paint the skies, and the finest garments would sweep the grounds like royalty itself. For weeks, the village prepared, cleaning paths, hanging bright cloths, and practicing songs. Everyone was talking about who would attend, who would shine, and what surprises the festival might bring. At home, Akume watched in silence as Nelisa twirled in front of the mirror, her gold dress sparkling with pride. She had matching beads, glitter on her eyes, and loud laughter in her mouth. She called Akume into the room and pointed at her with a smirk. "You? At the festival? With what dress? Go wash plates," she snapped. Akume didn't answer. She just turned and walked away. Inside her heart, a storm brewed. She wanted to go, not to be seen, but to feel alive again, to step out of the shadows, if only for a night. That evening, as the sun dipped low, a knock came at the door. It was little Kima, the goat herder's daughter, holding a folded cloth in her hands. "A man told me to give this to you," she said, and ran off. Akume opened the bundle slowly. Her breath caught. It was a wrapper of deep blue, shining with silver threads. Simple, but royal in every stitch. Her hands trembled. There was no note, but she knew. It was from him, from Tunobi. She dressed quietly that night. No jewelry, no powder, her hair in a soft bun. The blue cloth hugged her like comfort. As she stepped out and walked toward the festival grounds, the village lights flickered like stars. Her feet were unsure, but something inside her stood tall. When she entered the festival grounds, time paused. Conversations stopped. Music softened. Every head turned. Even queens glanced her way. Her walk wasn't grand. It was graceful. Her eyes held no pride, just peace. But somehow, she looked like royalty, born from silence. Tunobi stood across the crowd, dressed like a visiting noble now. His eyes found her, and his heart stilled. The girl under the baobab tree now shined brighter than any gem. Even Nelisa, in all her gold, faded in the background like dust behind a star. Whispers filled the air. Who is she? Where did she come from? What grace! Akume didn't notice the stares. She looked only once, at Tunobi. He smiled. She smiled back, for the first time in a long time. The drums resumed. The air danced. But the true festival had already begun. The moment Grace walked through pain and stepped into her light. Nelisa watched from the shadows, her face tight with fury. She saw Akume and Tunobi talking softly near the lantern-lit trees, and her heart burned with jealousy. This wasn't just some village boy. Nelisa didn't know who he truly was, but she could feel his presence was different. The way people looked at him, The way he carried himself, it wasn't ordinary. And now he was giving his attention to Akume, the girl she had worked so hard to humiliate. It was too much. She stormed away and found Oba, the village playboy, known for his charm and empty promises. With a fake smile and a few sweet lies, she convinced him to play a cruel game. "Make a proposal," she said. "Make it big, then turn it into a joke. I'll reward you." Oba laughed. "That'll be fun," he agreed. The night of the festival sparkled with laughter and dancing. Drums beat through the ground. People wore their finest. Akume stood quietly by the edge, her blue and silver wrapper glowing softly in the light. Tunobi stood nearby, watching her like she was the only one in the world. Then it happened. Oba walked into the center of the crowd with a loud voice and a flashy smile. He looked straight at Akume, holding a carved wooden ring. People turned, curious. Akume's eyes widened. "Akume," Oba called out, "will you marry me?" The crowd gasped. Some clapped. Some looked shocked. Akume froze. She didn't know what to say. Tunobi watched, his face unreadable. Just as Akume stepped forward, confused and shaken, Oba suddenly turned to the side, pointed at Nalisa and grinned. "Oh no," he laughed. "Sorry, my mistake. I meant to propose to Nalisa." The laughter that followed was loud, wild and cruel. Some clapped again, now for the joke. Others looked at Akume with pity. Her face fell. Her lips trembled. She stood there, humiliated again, just like the times before. The wrapper she once felt proud of now felt heavy on her skin. Tunobi didn't laugh. He didn't move. His jaw tightened. His eyes locked on Oba, then Nalisa. He had seen enough. Akume turned and walked away slowly, her feet dragging like her heart. She reached her hut, closed the door, and fell to the ground in tears. In the darkness, she sobbed quietly, her face buried in her arms. The memories of all the mockery, the fake love, the cruel games, they crashed into her again. She didn't know this was Nalisa's doing. She thought it was just fate playing another trick on her. Outside, the music kept playing, but Akume heard none of it, only silence and the breaking of her own spirit. But in another corner of the village, Tunobi stood under the stars, his eyes still fixed on the path she had taken. And in that moment, he made a decision, one that would change everything. The sun had barely risen when the sound of heavy drums rolled through the village of Kalui like thunder. It wasn't the usual rhythm of festival songs. This was powerful, sharp, and urgent. People rushed from their huts, confused and curious. Then they saw them, royal guards in blue and gold armor, riding majestic horses, their spears shining under the early morning light. At their center was a man dressed in a robe stitched with pure gold thread. His head held high, his face calm, but his eyes burning with purpose. It was Tunobi, but not the Tunobi who bought tomatoes at the market. This was Prince Tunobi, heir to the throne of Elaro Kingdom. Gasps spread like wildfire. Children froze mid-run. Elders stepped back and bowed low. Even the birds seemed to pause in the trees. But Tunobi did not walk toward the village square, where the elders waited. He didn't face the crowd or the thrones or the chief. He turned in one direction only, Akume's hut. Each step he took was silent, yet heavy. His guards followed, clearing the way. Akume had not come out. She sat quietly in the dark corner of her hut, still wearing the blue wrapper, her eyes swollen from the night before. She thought it was just another morning of shame. Suddenly, there was a knock. Then the door opened wide, and there he stood, no longer just a kind stranger, but a prince dressed in gold. He stepped forward, knelt beside her, and gently lifted her chin. Akume stared at him, shocked and confused. Her breath caught in her throat. Then, outside her hut, in front of the entire village, Prince Tunobi raised her hand and spoke loud and clear. "This is the woman I will marry, not because of her face, not because of her clothes, but because of her spirit, stronger than betrayal, brighter than any jewel." The village went silent. Mouths dropped open. Chief Baruti stumbled forward and fell to his knees, his voice shaking. He had never imagined his quiet daughter would stand beside royalty. Nalisa stood frozen, her golden fan slipping from her fingers and falling to the dusty ground. Her face turned pale, her lips trembled. All her plans, her tricks, her laughter, swept away in one moment of truth. Tunobi turned to the people. "You judged her by silence. I saw her soul." And with that, he placed a royal sash over Akume's shoulder. Cheers slowly began. Then louder, Women ululated, men clapped, children danced. Akume stood still, tears falling, not from pain, but from disbelief, joy, and the feeling of finally being seen. That morning, Kalui witnessed more than a royal visit. They saw the rise of a girl who was once laughed at, now standing beside a prince, not because she fought back with anger, but because she endured and remained true. Truth, like thunder, had spoken. The whole village of Kalui buzzed with excitement like never before. From the early dawn, people gathered in the open square, their faces bright with hope and pride. This was no ordinary day. It was the day Akume would become queen, a moment so grand that stories of it would be told for generations. The air smelled of fresh earth and golden palm wine, and the rhythm of drums echoed through every corner, calling all to witness history. White horses stood tall and proud, their manes shining under the sun. The drummers came not only from Kalui, but from 2 neighboring kingdoms, their beats strong and steady, announcing the union of 2 souls and 2 realms. Colourful banners waved in the gentle breeze, fluttering like the wings of birds celebrating freedom. Akume stepped into the sunlight, her heart steady, her head held high. She wore a gown woven from sapphire silk that shimmered like the night sky. It was a simple dress, yet it held the weight of her journey. Every tear, every hurt, every moment she had been pushed down. But now, there was no fear in her eyes, no shame in her smile, only the quiet strength of a woman who had walked through fire and emerged whole. The crowd fell silent as Prince Tonobi approached her. His face was calm but full of pride. In his hands, he held a crown made of tiny beads, each one representing a blessing from the elders, the ancestors, and the people who had waited for this day. He gently placed the crown on Akume's head and whispered words that rippled through the hearts of all who listened. From heartbreak to throne, you are my queen. A roar erupted from the crowd. Men, women, and children raised their voices in celebration, shouting her name with joy and reverence. Queen Akume! Queen Akume! The elders, some of whom had once scoffed at her humble ways and quiet spirit, stepped forward. They bent low and kissed her feet, acknowledging her rise from the ashes of cruelty to the peak of honor. Their eyes shone with respect, and the weight of their approval was heavier than any jewel. The atmosphere was alive with cheers, laughter, and dancing. Friends and strangers alike shared palm wine, toasted to new beginnings, and sang songs of victory. The streets of Kalui felt like a river of happiness, flowing endlessly around the bride and her prince. Even Nelisa, once so full of envy and cruelty, stood on the edge of the crowd, her face pale and her heart heavy. She watched as Akume's joy shone brighter than any gold she had ever worn. This wedding wasn't just a ceremony, it was the crowning of courage, kindness, and the power of staying true to oneself despite all odds. Akume, the girl who had endured pain, was now the queen who ruled hearts. That day, Kalui didn't just celebrate a they celebrated the triumph of a spirit that refused to be broken. As the wedding celebrations began to wind down, a sudden silence fell over the crowd. A tall royal guard stepped forward, holding an official scroll high for everyone to see. His voice rang out clear and strong, cutting through the joyful noise like thunder. By royal command, let it be known, Nelisa of Kalui is hereby banned from the kingdom of Elaro and stripped of all festival honors for her actions of public humiliation and abuse against Akume. Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Eyes turned sharply toward Nelisa, who stood frozen, her face drained of color. The once proud woman, adorned with shining gold jewelry and countless bangles, now felt the weight of shame pressing down hard on her chest. Slowly, the guards reached for her arms and began to remove the heavy bracelets, one by one. Each bangle hit the ground with a loud clink, echoing in the stunned silence. Nelisa's lips trembled as she fell to her knees, begging with desperation, tears streaming down her face. She cried out for mercy, for forgiveness, for just a chance to explain herself. But the crowd had no sympathy left. Their eyes, once amused by her arrogance, now burned with judgment. Even the elders who once listened to her turned away in disappointment. Akume stood apart, quiet and calm, not even glancing in Nelisa's direction. Her heart was steady, untouched by the tears of the one who had tried to destroy her. She knew true strength was shown not in revenge, but in rising above cruelty. Akume's gaze was fixed on the future, a future of hope, peace, and rightful honor. Nelisa was left alone, surrounded by a sea of faces that once envied her, but now only showed disdain. Her beautiful gold dress was stained with dust and sweat. The fine cloth no longer sparkled under the sun, but hung limp and dull. The glitter of her jewels was gone, replaced by the cold reality of rejection. For the first time in her life, Nelisa felt what it meant to be powerless and humiliated in front of everyone. Her steps once filled the house with arrogance and commands, but now she stumbled through the village, unnoticed and despised. The laughter and mocking words she had once thrown at Akume now echoed back at her, louder and sharper. This moment was karma's hand, the consequence of envy and cruelty. Nelisa's downfall was not because of luck or fate, but the natural return of her own actions. She had tried to break Akume's spirit, but in the end, it was her own pride that shattered. The people of Kalui whispered that day about how quickly fortunes can change. One moment, a woman can wear gold and command respect, and the next, she can be left in dust, forgotten and alone. Nelisa's story became a powerful lesson for everyone, that true honor comes from kindness, and cruelty only leads to ruin. As the sun set over Kalui, Nelisa's figure faded into the shadows. She was no longer the queen of jealousy, but a warning to all who dared to spread pain for selfish gain. Meanwhile, Akume's light grew even brighter, shining as a beacon of hope and justice for the entire kingdom. Akume, now crowned queen of Elaro, carried herself with a quiet strength that spoke louder than any crown or jewel. Beside King Tonobi, she ruled with a heart full of wisdom and a mind sharp as a spear. Her past pain had not made her bitter. Instead, it forged a deep kindness that spread throughout the kingdom. Akume remembered every insult, every cruel word, and every tear she shed, but she chose to use those memories to build a better future, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been looked down upon. She opened schools for girls who, like her, had once been mocked and ignored. These girls learned to read and write, to dream big and believe in themselves. Akume wanted them to know they were worth more than anyone's judgment. She made sure no girl in Elaro would ever feel invisible. At the same time, she created jobs for boys who had once laughed at her or doubted her. She knew that true leadership was about lifting others up, not tearing them down. By giving them purpose, she turned former enemies into loyal friends. Despite all she had suffered, Akume chose forgiveness over hatred. But forgiveness did not mean forgetting. She held on to the lessons of her past, using them to guide her decisions and protect her people. When she addressed her court one bright morning, her words echoed through the grand hall and beyond. True royalty isn't worn on the body, it's carried in the soul. Her voice was steady, full of the power that only truth can give. The courtiers, nobles, and citizens listened closely, knowing that this queen was different, one who ruled not by fear or riches, but by justice and grace. Meanwhile, far from the grand palace and golden halls, Nelisa's life had taken a sharp turn. No longer draped in fine cloth and gold bangles, she now sat by the roadside of her old village, Kalui, selling sugarcane to passing travelers. Her hands, once adorned with jewels, were now rough and calloused from daily work. The villagers who once admired her now passed her by without a second glance. Each day, as she wiped sweat from her brow, Nelisa whispered to herself in a voice barely loud enough to hear, "I tried to break her, but she became a queen." Those words were heavy with regret and disbelief. She had spent years trying to destroy Akume, only to watch her rise higher than anyone could have imagined. Akume's triumph was not just a victory over Nelisa's cruelty, it was proof that kindness, strength, and patience could overcome even the darkest envy. In her palace, Queen Akume lived every day as a reminder that power was not about status or wealth. It was about the courage to stay true to oneself, the grace to forgive, and the heart to serve others. Her reign was marked by peace and progress, inspiring countless young girls and boys across Elaro to believe that they too could change their destiny. Akume's story spread far and wide, not just as a tale of a girl who became a queen, but as a living example of what it means to hold power with honor. She showed the world that a true queen wears her heart proudly and leads with love and justice. And so, while Nelisa sold sugarcane by the roadside, lost in her whispers of regret, Queen Akume ruled with a soul shining brighter than any crown, a true queen in every sense of the word. If Akume's story touched your heart and reminded you that true strength comes from kindness, forgiveness, and believing in yourself, then don't keep this powerful message to yourself. Everyone deserves to hear that no matter how hard life tries to break you, you can rise stronger and shine brighter than ever before. Think about Akume, how she faced cruelty, betrayal, and heartbreak, yet never lost hope. She showed us all that real royalty isn't about riches or crowns, but about the courage inside us to keep moving forward with grace. If you believe in the power of resilience and kindness, then share this story with someone who needs that hope today. Let's spread this message of love, justice, and inner strength far and wide. Hit the like button if Akume's journey inspired you. Share this video with your friends and family so they too can feel the power of never giving up. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting stories that remind us all of the magic we carry inside. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this journey. Your support means the world to us. And together, we can make sure these beautiful tales of courage and heart keep shining for everyone. Stay strong, stay kind, and remember, your story matters just as much as Akume's.